Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Health and Wealth Podcast with your hosts, Tim and Carter.
What's trending, Enrichers? Carter Wilcoxson, founder of CSI Financial Group here, with my co-host and former wealth advisor, Tim James, founder of
ChemicalFreeBody.com and your new health advisor. This is the show where we reveal the connection between physical and financial abundance.
Hey, welcome back, Enrichers. Carter Wilcoxson coming to you remotely, actually, from Fayetteville, Arkansas. I'm actually out here visiting family and friends, and we're very excited about our guest today. But as normal, we have my phenomenal co-host, Mr. Chemical Free Body himself, Tim James. Tim James, how are you, my man?
Dude, I'm doing really good. I'm doing awesome. I do want to say, though, for the listeners out there, it's like Carter said he's visiting family and friends, but he didn't say why. His mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I believe you didn't say cancer, but that was what it was, right?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, and he's out here visiting his mom on hospice and stuff. So this show is actually a little break from all the family stuff and the things he's doing. So this is a perfect reality check for everybody listening. I had a gal on my show that was a death doula, and her name was actually Presence, and then she married a dude, and his last name was Grace, so her name is now Presence Grace. So we'll figure that out. But the reason why I had her on the show is because, and I actually created, we have a T-shirt design in our swag store. It says, "Live and die happy," right? And one of the reasons, again, that I had her on was because after being with people when they're dying over 80 times, right? There's birth doulas helping people and screaming and crying on your way out because you didn't live, because you didn't fulfill what your potential and all that stuff. So, and she says most people are like that, and they'll drag on and drag on and drag on, and they just won't die because they're afraid, and they hang on, and they just make it hard for themselves, and they're making it hard for their family. But then there's these other people that kind of figured things out, and what they're doing is they enjoyed their life, and they lived a full life, and they did what they wanted to do and what they were supposed to do, and they were happy to go on to the next adventure, right? So it's a whole different dynamic. So this is actually happening, and we're talking about a lot of the health and wealth stuff here, and obviously Carter's business is focused on succession planning, and you don't have to be a gazillionaire to pass on assets. And some of the assets are your stories, right? And instruction. And, Carter has a whole company built around that to help the advisors, to help the clients set up their succession or estate plan very easily, and have you put those stories in video or audio format so that your kids and grandkids don't make the same, and great grandkids don't make the same mistakes that you do, hopefully. And that you can educate them above ground and below ground. So, this episode's really important because, we have, I've got a mom and dad. I got my estate plan set up. Carter's mom's death, and understand that you are mortal, and you are going to stop taking a breath at some point, and your heart is going to stop beating. Wow. When you get this, and normally in my work, this is like one of the most precious moments, because when people get cancer diagnosis, it's not like terminal like your mom, Carter. But when people get cancer diagnoses and they go to a Hippocrates Health Institute, and they're sitting with one of their good psychotherapists, and they'll be like, well, why are you here? Well, I've got, stage 4 breast cancer, or I've got stage 4 prostate cancer, or whatever. Oh, wow. That's pretty awesome. Congratulations. And the person with the illness is like going, what the hell are you talking about? And I didn't understand in the beginning too, but no, congratulations. You're one of the few people on this planet that actually gets a chance to truly live. Truly live. Because you can be alive, you can be breathing, and your heart's beating, but you're so worried about things that are going to happen in the future, and you're thinking about the past and how somebody wronged you or how you wronged somebody else, and you're not living in the present moment. And you're definitely, a lot of people are not living their excitement. They're not living their joy, what they're passionate about, out of fear. And one of my mentors calls human beings the masters of limitation. And boy, are we really good at limiting ourselves. So one of the parts of this podcast is to break those limitations and help you, find yourself. It's really not that hard. It's been made to be more complicated than it is. And to just give yourself permission slips to be happy. Right. And, she's, never going to die. It's just this bodysuit, and then she's on to the next thing, and which is really cool. So it's a pretty cool time in your life actually right now. It's not something to be really, you can feel all the emotions of sadness and whatever you want to do. You have permission to do that, but it's, it's a celebration. Actually, around other cultures and stuff, they celebrate death. It's just part of the whole process. So in our culture, it's kind of weird. It's just like somebody dies and grab the body and throw it in a bag and whisk it off, and nobody really has time to really, process all this stuff and be there. It's such a hidden, taboo thing to talk about, and it should just be like talked about all the time, and it's not that big of a deal, and it's part of the process, and we're all going to experience it. So anyway, I just want to make a point about that today. And so back to you, Carter.
Yeah, no, hey, Tim, I really appreciate that. Obviously, you and I have become very close, friends and confidants, and that's meaningful. And I appreciate that. And LaTika, I appreciate, your patience and willingness to come on the show and everything during this time. And it is meaningful. And it's reflective, right? And I think it's always a good time for things like this, and we'll call it adversity, for you to kind of sort of take stock in your life. LaTika, I'm looking at you. Obviously, you're fairly young, right? I know just from our previous conversations, you've got a young family, and and you don't think about that, right? You're like you're going to live to be 100, right? You're going to live forever, and it's always a good time to be reflective and start thinking about that and appreciate what it is that we have. And I don't necessarily mean in a way where you settle. But you can appreciate, and there is definitely a huge difference. But without further ado, I want to go ahead and bring in our guest, LaTika Tillis, coming in from, I believe, it's someplace in Texas. Is it Houston?
Houston. Okay. The only place.
So LaTika, let's talk about, what was it that brought you in? Was there an influence along the way that kind of sort of led you down this path that ultimately helps you to help people, right? Which means that you have something in your makeup that allows you to be attracted to helping people. So, who was it that brought you into the business? What was it, if you can take us back to that beginning stage in your life that led you to the financial services business?
Yeah. So to be honest, I never, ever saw myself in this industry. I didn't seek it out. I didn't look for it. It kind of found me in a sense. And so what do you do when you're fresh out of college? I need a job. I need money, got to pay bills, got to get it done. And so the first one that comes a knocking, let's go for it. And so actually I was terrified for even the prospect of thinking that I would be in any industry near anybody's money. So I met it with a lot of apprehension. I made a C in my personal finance class in college. I went to Baylor University, by the way, but
Go Bears.
Yeah, go Bears, sick 'em Bears, right? And so it was kind of daunting for me to come into the industry. And so I came in as an assistant, and I worked through, and I was like, you know what, this is just going to be a pit stop, because my goal was to go on and to be a counselor. So still that heart of service, that heart of helping people. And I wanted to be a counselor in the school system. I wanted to help kids, going through grieving and things of that nature, and just helping them set up their lives. But I got involved in this industry, and I kind of got stuck, and not on accident, but by choice at that time. The things I started to learn, even though most of the clients, or all of the clients we dealt with, were high net worth individuals and families that I never had access to growing up as a young girl or even as a young woman, something started to resonate. Something started to ring true for me. I'm like, this is a subset of information that I just have not been privy to. No fault of anybody's own. My parents gave me all they could. I was the first one in my immediate family to go to college. And so there was just a lot lacking that they couldn't give me. And like I said, I picked up a little nuggets here and there along the way. Like I said, I got a C in personal finance in college because it was one of those in my own lives. I've helped my parents implement some of it in their lives, kicking and screaming, unfortunately, but
pretty typical.
But we've at least started having conversations now that they haven't had. And so that's kind of been my mission. Like I said, we deal for the past 15 years. I've worked with a team of advisors and their clients and business owners, and we've done some really robust, really cool things on the planning side that probably wouldn't work for me or my family because we're not of that particular net worth group. But I'm looking to see how I can take a lot of that how can we bring it down, make it portable or palatable for the people within my sphere of influence. So that's kind of where my heart is expanding to, outside of what I do between these walls right here. So
nice. So it's essentially, you brought up Baylor. I don't know if we talked about this, the very first time, but my wife played softball at Baylor.
Yeah, no, I don't think we did.
Yeah, I would have thought we would have probably had, a conversation about that, right?
I don't know. Can't remember. A lot has happened between then and now, so who can tell?
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So so your parents didn't really have any influence on you at all as far as getting to the financial services whatsoever. But now that you're in it, you've been able to help them. You mentioned, kind of sort of, tongue in cheek, right? That kicking and screaming.
Right.
And I always find that interesting. I'm staying with a buddy of mine out here, him and his wife, in Bella Vista, Arkansas. And he was talking just last night, talking about, like, my dad always told me you never do business with friends or family, right? So I think that's a little bit of why sometimes our family and our friends, it's like they're so afraid of, like, you're going to mess something up. But don't you find that interesting? Like, you can help them maybe more than anybody else can, but they feel more comfortable going to someone else for the same solutions that you provide.
Yeah. I don't know what that is. Some of it, I think, from what Tim was saying earlier, I think it was fear. I think it was really on my dad's side. I think it was fear of facing the future, the prospect of retiring, the prospect of why it was that he was responding to me in that way. Because it wasn't like he was going to another advisor to advise him. He just wasn't dealing with it. So I don't think it was so much of, I don't trust my daughter. I don't trust family. It was just an avoidance for whatever reason. And that's the thing that I'm baffled by on that side. So,
well, and I think it's like, it's like anything when, it's like this real big thing, whatever that thing is, right? If people avoid that big thing, which is, and Tim talked about a little bit, early on that, we've developed this entire process to help advisors and their clients really get their affairs in order, right?
Yeah.
It's that, the whole estate planning, but it's really family succession planning is what we call it. And I think a lot of it is because most clients, and rightly so, traditionally speaking, they're like, I'm not really sure where to start. It's going to be, it's going to be painful. I don't, maybe it's a little bit of, I don't want to, I want to keep my head buried in the sand almost.
Yeah.
So, if you can make it real simple and easy and cost effective, where they know that it's the peace of mind that you can ultimately deliver, that's what will help to motivate them. And that's what we've seen with a lot of our advisors, is that we give them permission basically to be like, look, we're going to comprehensively put things together for you. And it's not going to be as painful as you think. And it becomes like this baby step mentality that you can help them overcome. And then by the time they're all done, they're like, oh, that wasn't as I thought it was going to be.
Agreed. But you got to get to the front door.
Totally.
Well, one thing that we used to do is we would talk about estate planning. It usually worked really good, especially with the men. Good. It's like, oh, okay. But yeah, are you planning on setting that? Are you planning on taking care of that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, actually that was the next sentence. Then I would say, if they said no, then what you say is, well, you actually do have one set up. Did you know that? You do have you do have it set up. I'm like, what are you talking about? I never set up. Like, the state has already got it set up for you. Right. Which is a government agency.
Right.
I don't know if you've been to the post office or if you've been to DMV lately, or if you've tried to have you ever been divorced in your life? Oh, I see you have been divorced. What was that like, going through those regulations and stuff and dealing with government, and the power, the societal, paperwork and all that stuff. So all that paperwork, it's already drawn up. So if you want to leave that with your kids and stuff, or it's because sometimes people don't care about, sometimes they actually don't even care about their kids, which is they have a bad relationship, but most people do. But, it's like, why would you, I would literally, it was like, I was doing psychology with them. I'd find out where they hated some part of government and then be like, stick the knife in and twist it and say, look, they're going to be taking your money. They're going to put it in probate and explain the whole thing to them. And then, I'd get them all riled up, and I was like, you can avoid that. Like, I would do anything I could to get them to get off their butt and get an estate plan put in place and get a trust, not just a will. Since you got Jimmy and Timmy, and Jimmy thinks that he's going to get the crescent wrench, but so does Timmy. And when you're dead, if you don't have it spelled out, they're both going to fight. And then what's going to end up happening is they may never talk to each other again. And then your wife, who loves you and loves the kids, is going to be completely distraught. And you're really going to harm your wife's health and her emotional state because her kids no longer talk to each other and they can't even come over. Now they have to rotate Thanksgivings and Christmases. I mean, this is the level of stuff that's going on. You might not think it's going to happen, but
I love
will.
the imagination. I love that. I love the hypothetical manipulation there. But it could happen. You're right.
Yeah. And a lot of some of the stories I was telling you about were actually true.
Wow.
Yeah.
Some of these stories are true. I mean, I would just say some stuff about the state or whatever if it didn't make sense, but then give them an example, trying to make them relate to it. And I'm like, look, you hired me. Like, I'm trying to get, it's like, this is one of my job. The hardest job is try to get people to wake up and get your affairs in order so you can just, don't leave a mess. Okay. Don't leave a big mess. Flush the toilet now. Get it cleaned up. Take the garbage out now. Otherwise it's just going to fester and it's going to get worse. It's going to stink and it's going to be a disgusting bomb for your family to pick up the pieces if you don't. And it's really easy to do. It's not hard. Right, Carter? 90% in 90 minutes now.
That's exactly right. I mean, we're leveraging technology to be able to get 90% of their estate plan done in 90 minutes or less. And that's the beauty about technology. And, all the time, LaTika, I've seen it destroy families over and over and over again. But, one of the things that we our advisors deliver what we call the 3 E's: educate, enlighten, and empower an audience with our educational presentation that they incorporate. And when we talk about that empowerment, I mean, that's the key component, right? And this industry has done a phenomenal job of that can happen. And, we share examples of, Martin Luther King, 55 years being in probate, and, Prince and Aretha Franklin and Whitney Houston. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on of all the celebrities who had all the money in the world that didn't make it a priority to get it done. Right. So obviously the average everyday, citizen in the United States, in Houston or, Austin or Los Angeles or, Boca Raton, Florida, wherever, they deserve to be able to have access to that type of stuff. And that's what we really, deliver to them. And it is impactful and it can help families. And obviously it's very top of mind right now with me for obvious reasons. Right. And it all too often, people they just think it's not for them. And if you don't educate the mass on this, the underserved demographic.
Yeah, it really is. It really is about education. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we're going to get into what LaTika is doing to help her clients protect and preserve their financial assets. We'll be right back.
Estate planning. What does that even mean? When the inevitable happens for everyone on this planet, your estate plan kicks into action. But first, let's start with what an estate is. An estate is simply everything you own. Now, here's the issue and what needs to be understood when this event occurs. You only have 2 choices on this plan. Number 1, either you plan how your estate gets handed out and distributed to those you leave behind. Or number 2, your state decides who gets everything you own. For the first time ever, you can now take complete and total control of this plan that you've been deprived of for most of your life and generations before you. You can get personalized assistance along the way with a team of specialists whose job it is to make sure you have true peace of mind. It's important to understand that estate planning is a journey, and rest assured that our team will be available to you all along the way and at every step. Welcome to eState Plan, home of the last estate plan you'll ever need. To learn more, make sure to reach out to your local advisor licensed with us or go to our website for more information.
What's up, Enrichers? Tim James here. I am back with my co-host Carter Wilcoxson. Today in the house, we've got LaTika Tillis out of Houston, Texas, financial advisor down there. And I know, LaTika, you're really big on education.
Yes.
pre-show talk and what you've mentioned here, and what it's done for you. It's just like eyes open. It's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And it's like, wow. And you actually recognize what you could do with that information.
We start talking about what does that plan look like? And of course that talks about that succession plan and that estate plan, because if you don't have the right things in place, who cares what your assets were doing? Like you said, to your point in the last segment, if the state's going to take it over, if it's not being disseminated, per your wishes, you've taken all this time to amass all this wealth, and you don't have a proper estate plan in place to actually target those areas you want to target with your wealth, whether it's charity or your kids or whatever the case might be. And so my team does a very good job just on the front end, making sure we have that conversation out the gate. And so that's one thing I've learned and appreciated, to where I think a family comes in and they're like, well, you're not just in it for the dollars that are in my pocket. You actually care about my family and my potential legacy. And so just leading in from that standpoint, I think has been one of the things that's kept me with this specific team for so long, because I've just always enjoyed and loved that approach. And then on the second prong I talked about is more akin to that education for that underserved side, to where I thought it was interesting on the last segment, Carter, you mentioned all of the people that were wealthy celebrities that didn't have an estate plan. Well, it was interesting that they all happened to be African American, right? And whether that was on purpose or not, which I'm sure it wasn't, it's interesting because from a cultural side, you tend to find, and this is not a race thing, there are people you can find in every pocket and facet of the world that has the same problem. But I can speak personally from a cultural side that from the African American community, it's not a priority for us. We were tight-lipped when it came to talking about money or what happened when you died, because it was just a conversation no one wanted to have, and no one thought they had enough to pass on. And so even down to living wills, not even what happens when you die, but what happens if you get incapacitated and somebody needs to take care of your affairs for you. There are no POAs, there are no healthcare directives, nothing is in place, and no one wants to have the conversation. And so I've taken it up on myself to try and bring this effort and this education to primarily the African American community and anybody else that will listen, obviously, to just let them know. Me and Timmy's mom, we just want to lessen that impact. And it was interesting. I had a conversation with a relative of mine. My aunt actually passed away in January of this year from cancer. And so the family was going through all of that. Now, I appreciate that. And I wanted to do a little digging there to see what was going on. And it's still been one of those things. I think that might be a keep family at bay situation. But I had a conversation with her surviving husband. And I was like, hey, well, let's have this conversation now. And he avoided it like the plague, just like everybody else. But it's important for me to at least have the conversation to at least just start exposure. Let's just get a seed planted. Let's just plant a seed at least. I might not be the one to water it. I might not be the one to make it grow, but you have to at least know why this is important. And so I've actually authored a book. I call it The Financial Planner. Isn't that so awesome? Isn't that just like mind-blowing? Financial planner. Yeah. Right? It's so unique. It's so outside the box. It's so unique. No one's ever come up with anything like this before. And so anyhow, and I wanted to make it simple so it kind of connects. And it's kind of a DIY your financial plan, right? For that audience that wouldn't necessarily sit in front of myself at this firm or any other advisor, whether they don't seek it out or they just don't fit the profile. And so let's DIY this process. And we do have an estate plan process to where it just walks you through the basics. And it says exactly what Tim said. You don't want the state determining what happens with what you've worked hard to build. And so just like I said, I'm just trying on that front to just get an introduction made. And I've got a lot of plans to build on that, using the model that we use here at our firm to lead in with this is why I care. Forget the other stuff. This is why I care. Let's get this in place and let's build from that point. So that's kind of what my focus is on the personal side of things. Like I said, the firm's great. We've got, I run the private equity division right now. So I've bounced around several different times in this industry. So I'm on that side of the equation where people gap as much as I can,
Well, I love that. And the last episode that we recorded, we actually talked about the same individual that was impactful for me. So growing up in Little Rock, Arkansas, which we just had, I got the notification this day in history, right, was whenever they called in the National Guard in Little Rock, Arkansas, right? Whenever they were segregating the schools and everything, that literally just happened. So I was sort of like born and raised in this area that was, influenced by the race relations or lack thereof, if you will, right? So it's been impactful for me whenever I found out about what estate planning really is. I didn't think it was, I didn't really know what it was myself whenever I first started going down this road to try to make that accessible for the mass affluent, as I call it. But growing up, I had a cousin, Dwight. My Aunt Peggy married a black man. So my cousin Dwight, half black, right? But to everybody else, he was black, right? And then whenever I started going down this path, and of course, we're really close. He's a few years younger than me, but we're very close. And I've sort of vicariously lived through him as much as I could. And I've got a better understanding maybe than most because it's in my family.
So you're telling me you secretly wanted to be a black man?
No,
I'm kidding. Look, that's my personality. You just have to roll with me. I
love that. But that exposure, right, of a family member, right? I had a better empathetic understanding than most. Then I started going down this path on estate planning, and I listened to a podcast from the King. Those are like top of mind. These are people that are celebrities that, in Prince and Aretha Franklin. These are very well-known, established celebrity failures when it comes to estate planning, right? But in that demographic, and a lot of our team members have shared with me that they're trying to make that more accessible and expose the access that we make. And I've made it sort of more top of mind. That's not to say that there aren't plenty of every race that everybody needs estate planning. But whenever I heard this podcast from Art Steele, she talked about the biggest reason. She's like, I wish I could holler from the rooftops. Obviously, she's African-American, attorney and everything. And her background was spectacular when I heard it, and where her family came from over here from, I can't remember what African country it was from, but anyway, she was born here, but her parents had to, it's Liberia. They had to come over from Liberia. Anyway, just listening to her story, I'm just like, I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, what is she going to say next? She was basically saying that the wealth gap that happens is specifically because of lack of planning in the estate planning arena.
That's right.
And ever since then, I'm like, wait a second. No one growing up with my cousin Dwight, and I'm just like, okay, so this can really be positively impactful if we can make available to that demographic. So I'm sorry, I sort of have this passion towards, because of my cousin and because of my exposure and because of just being in this industry now, we can really make a difference, and we can narrow that wealth gap if we can expose estate planning / family succession planning, to the people of color, brown and black and whatever. I mean, it is a race. And
I think we need a new language. I think we should just call it like, stop getting robbed.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, have you been, don't get robbed when you die.
Yeah. Well, at some point, it's not a matter of you getting robbed. It's a matter of you actually emptying your pocketbook and saying, here, take it all. That's kind of where we are.
You're
now.
willingly.
Like, it's not, once you've been exposed and once someone's given you the information, now you're accountable. You're no longer complicit to robbery. You're complicit to your own inability and inaction to be able to do something for yourself. And I think that's where, in some instances, the rub is for people is taking accountability for something that is greater than just today. And like, for instance, I I know I was at actually a Health is Wealth Expo this weekend, predominantly African American, and it was a mental health conference. And so I was a vendor there as a financial coach, and several people stopped by and we had a chit chat and conversation. And I was, on the right of me was like a lady selling some stuff. And on the left of me was a guy selling some stuff, like some bracelets and necklaces and stuff for like $60. My book cost $30. And when I went through and explained it, they passed right by the book and went and bought that $80 necklace, which no shade to anybody there, but it was just a good way for me to see the mindset is they're there for mental health, but you don't realize how your financial well-being actually influences your mental health or can influence your mental health and vice versa. But somehow today, the $60 necklace is more valuable to me than making sure I'm taken care of financially today and in the future for my family or whomever else. It's just a mindset thing. It's just one of those things that it takes some re-indoctrinating maybe into admitted to a hospital because now I've got all these health issues. Now I think about the family succession plan. It should be important now as a 40-year-old woman with 3 young children. So I have an estate plan that I update every time I have a kid because I feel like I have a kid every 2 years. But
I mean, freaking cell phones cost as much as a Social Security check now.
Do you see? So
I mean, 4 tires. I mean, done. Here's a Social Security check
for the month.
It's if you're making $1,500 or $1,000 or $2,500 or $800. I mean, it's nothing by the time 20, 30 years from now, it's going to be like a pack of gum.
Right. Especially with inflation and all this stuff.
It's not going to be there.
I thought it was interesting, Carter, when you mentioned, you were mentioning, I missed the point there. When I was thought about it when Tim was speaking and then I lost it. So
we were talking about Social Security before that.
No, it was something he'd said that I picked up on mentally that I was going to comment on, but it left me. So I don't want to stew on it. We can move on. Yeah.
It'll come back eventually.
But yeah.
Well, so you understand the importance though, right? And what I love whenever I talked to you initially, and obviously it's being reinforced right now, is that if you don't have this proactive planning, right, done, then, you're doomed to fail. Right. And, and I love how your emphasis, the beginning, and this is what we try to, teach every one of our advisors, like you have to lead with estate planning. It has to be foundational to your practice. And I loved when I talked to you about that in the first place, whenever we, had our initial, vetting conversation, and that is a core principle of around your planning. And it has to be foundational, because how can you build the Empire State Building if you don't have a good rock solid foundation?
Right. And I remember my point, the wealth gap you were talking about. So when we talk about the wealth gap in this country, regardless of what anybody's opinion is about it, we do know one thing is fact. There is a massive wealth gap, regardless of how it got here and all that good stuff. But in my conversations, when I talk to people that are Black individuals, the conversation comes up. And I tell them is if you're not taking personal incomes invalid from the sense that we were owned 400 years ago by a group of people that now we're trying to compare ourselves with, as far as from an economic standpoint, there are just economic advantages that we just didn't have. And in a sense, you feel like you're playing catch up, but why worry about playing catch up? Why not worry about what you need to do in your situation? And if we want to talk about the wealth gap, like you mentioned, a lot of people have inheritances that they can pass along, that they have a solid foundation and estate plan to be able to pass something on to their children. So one of my other big conversations with my demographic, with my audience, is life insurance and how that plays into it, and how you can actually create an estate through life insurance. Yeah. So it's all these conversations that come up.
Well, and that's such a great point, LaTika, in that, and in fact, that podcast, I'll share it with you because I've got it saved by Art Still. Leaving behind money where you just outright get money, right? Well, we already know the statistics, right? 70% of someone's wealth is gone within the first generation, right? And it doesn't matter what color you are, by the way. I mean, that's just how it works, right? Because when you inherit money and you didn't earn the money, well, you're not going to appreciate where it comes from, which is why part of our, what we call our estate plan, right, which is electronic stuff, includes our legacy stories, which allows how the wealth was created in the first place and appreciation. And then, of course, again, we encourage there to be an actual trust fund that's created. And a lot of people don't know, you can start a trust fund with a $500,000 or a $50,000 life insurance plan, right? And that can make a huge difference to somebody's and narrowing that wealth gap. And that's really what Art was talking about and what you're just alluded to. There's no better way to leverage dollars than with life insurance. There's just not. There's not a better vehicle to do that. And that's the fastest way to do it. So I applaud what you're doing in out there in Houston. And listen up, Enrichers. You might learn a few things here from LaTika.
You want the absolute best for yourself, and you want it to be easy. That's why we created Green 85. It helps with detoxifying the body gently. We're proud it's chemical-free, unlike almost all other supplements you'll find. Bottom line, Green 85 will get you healthier. We look forward to hearing what Green 85 did for you.
To get this product and our other amazing products, go to chemicalfreebody.com. That's chemicalfreebody.com.
What's up, Enrichers? Tim James here. I am back with my co-host, Carter Wilcoxson. All right, LaTika, this is the time where we flip the script. You get to ask me any question on health because this is the Health and Wealth Podcast.
Tim's in the hot seat now. So I like the chemical-free body. I wanted to focus on that because I know a lot of what we, all of what we put in our bodies and ingest and digest or don't digest because of what we ingest improperly lead to a lot of diseases. I know heart disease is a real big one in the community. I know colon cancer runs in my family because, like I mentioned, my aunt recently passed away with colon cancer. My grandmother was diagnosed with colon cancer. She's still living. Her brother was also diagnosed with colon cancer. So not to stick on the thread of cancer, but I do want to more so focus on that chemical-free portion of what you kind of push out there. And is there any advice? Are there any words of wisdom that you could provide regarding the chemical-free body on how to fuel ourselves, how to make sure we're properly get the proper nutrients we need to maybe not cure cancer, but make us a little less susceptible and being more mindful of keeping our bodies chemical free? Because I do tend to, if I'm taking medicine, it's like dire straight. I usually don't like to put certain things in my body, certain vaccines, so on and so forth. But could you kind of just give us a little background or give me some help on just kind of expounding more on that chemical-free body?
Well, I think the first thing, yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I built a whole business around that concept, right? So chemical-free just means what it is. It's like I try not to breathe in chemicals. Mm-hmm. I try not to drink chemicals. I try not to ingest any man-made synthetic chemicals. I try not to let any man-made chemicals absorb through my skin via potions and lotions and deodorants and toothpaste that we put in our mouth and all this stuff. And I think if people actually took the time to read labels and dissect what's actually in things, they would be shocked that probably 95% of the stuff that you can find in stores that you can legally purchase is slowly bioaccumulating toxins in your body and dragging down your immune system and making you fat cancer at all. Because I've learned how the body works. And yes, your family or anybody's family listening might have a predisposition to a genetic weakness. Of course. However, you get to decide how those genes express themselves by the environment that you put them in, which always going to go back to how's your emotional state and your stress. Number one, what do you have in place to balance or mitigate your stress? What do you do? Do you have any plan? Do you go for walks in nature? Do you get out in nature? Do you go to the beach? Do you go to the mountains? Do you get up in the trees? Do you do any breath exercises? Are doing any meditation practice? If you don't have any of that stuff in place, what are you doing to mitigate your stress? Because stress skyrockets up your disease, skyrocket. Mm-hmm. Because when you're stressed out, you're actually creating chemicals in your body that are not beneficial to health, and they're going to destroy your quality of life. So stress is a big one. And then we talk about toxins, pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, larvicides, chemical fertilizers, all the stuff that they're spraying onto the soil and onto the plants that are either we're eating or they're feeding animals with this stuff. But before they even spray them, a lot of them been genetically modified. So they've been manipulated by man. I've said this before, and like when you GMO or genetically modify a plant, you're disrupting the plant's internal metabolism. Well, what's the big deal about that? Well, normally they produce something called glutathione, which is good for the body, but now modified, now they produce formaldehyde, which is where you find at your local mortician's shop or in 7th, 8th grade biology where the dead frogs are. So why are we embalming ourselves with these things? And then the soils are denatured. 85% of the nutrients is farmed out of the soil today. So most people are walking around on 15% fuel. And they have no idea how good they can feel. So you heard of a friend. But how you respond to those family members, that's on you. That's your choice. You can choose to respond differently, and that's when your reality will change. You'll actually feel it energetically when you do this. I have tons of contrast here with my father, and I've been making some strides lately. I mean, I've been here for 6 months, and it's finally starting. It's tough. I'm not going to say it's tough because I'm programming my subconscious mind that way, but it's been a lot of contrast. But now how I'm responding is changing. And that's changing how I feel. So working on the stress, and then what are you doing to get the toxic chemicals out? Most people don't know that there's like the umbilical cord studies. Did I talk about the umbilical cord studies? Have you heard about those?
I have not.
So basically all you have to do is type in these three words. I have everybody do it all the time. Umbilical cord chemical in your search browser. And what'll pop up is a bunch of studies going back to 2005 that show that every single time they tested the umbilical cord blood of young mothers and young babies, supposedly the healthiest of all of us, they looked for 400 toxic chemicals. They found 250, 260 of what they're looking for. 71% of what they looked for, they found. And 180 of those cause cancer in human beings. 212 cause developmental and brain disorders. Major problems, right? It's in the womb, right? So what that means is our environment today is the synthetic clothing that you're wearing. If you're wearing a polyester top or polyester pants or Lycra bra, these are off-gassing. Even after 1,000 washes, 97% of these estrogen-mimicking chemicals that lead to things like breast cancer and ovarian cyst and uterine cyst and man boobs and, and prostate cancer, all this stuff in the clothing we're wearing because it's not natural. And then we go to the third component, which is the nutrition. We are detached from the mothership. We're not getting food out of the dirt, and we should be. Every single creature on this planet eats a 100% raw living food diet. We're the only ones that we cook our food, we pasteurize it, we irradiate it, we box it, we can it, we spray it with enriched synthetic vitamins, and we call that like enriched. It's like this whole concept. The kids' cereal is so denatured, so polluted, toxic, GMO corn, GMO soy. I mean, it's a mess. You go to the grocery store, there's no nutrition. That's not nutrition. And the vegetables are picked like 1,500 or, 2 weeks early, and they're shipped on average 1,500 to 2,500 miles. This is why we're sick. We're stressed out, we're polluted, and we're lacking nutrition. So all we do at Chemical Free Body is bring up these three big points, give people tools so that they can be empowered, they can become their own doctor, they can self-heal because nobody else is going to do it for you. you have to create an environment for your cells so those genes won't express themselves as colon cancer. So probably one of the reasons why your family has colon cancer is they're over consuming sleep. Well, they got check body lights going off all the time. Well, if your car's check engine light was going off, you take it into the shop. Otherwise, you're going to have a big repair bill or it's going to leave you stranded. But we have check body lights going off all the time, and people don't go there. They don't do nothing. And if they do, they go and they get more chemicals to put in their body from the medical community. And 90% of them are going to produce, they only work on 10% of people, and 90% are going to produce side effects. You've seen the list of them on commercials. They play the beautiful music, and then somebody's dancing around in fields, and then they, you could have increased gambling. You could have rectal bleeding. You could get cancer. You could go blind. But try this. It's like the whole thing is so stupid when you really just pause for a moment. The answer is like, it's outside. Yeah. It's going inside of yourself and learning and understanding that you have the power to heal yourself. You can change how your genes are going to express themselves, and then you got to go outside to nature. But the one thing I'll say it's really funny is, like, it's not funny, but the cancer researchers, what they'll do is they'll take healthy human tissue and then they'll put it in a petri dish with something that's carcinogenic. It's going to cause cancer. They know it's going to cause it. And then they study it when it happens, how it mutates. If that's what causes cancer, the environment, how about we just not put our healthy cells in that toxic environment? How about we do that instead of spending billions of dollars in research on how to create some other synthetic chemical thing to patent and charge 5,000 to 500,000% markups and to sell you to a cure because you're too lazy to get off your ass and educate. Good lifestyle, and you wake up, you're happy and you feel good and you're eating fresh foods and you start growing sprouts. And we have products and stuff to help with this. And that's what I do, is we created a whole product line with a doctor. It's doctor formulated, but not in the this is traditional medicine that's steeped in 10,000 years of biological engineering system science from India. This isn't like, we'll just try this and see if it works. So those are a lot of things that you can do, and you don't have to worry about this stuff. And I can already tell you have a great attitude. You have more mental clarity than most of the people that I talk to. So you're already on the path, and that's why you asked that question. And hopefully this conversation is going to lead you to the next place and to the next place, because you don't even really, I'll bet you don't even, I'm just telling you, everybody I talk to, nobody knows how good they can feel. I haven't really met anybody out of the gate. Even like Carter, when I first met him, he had a lot of energy, but he still didn't know. And he's, he's just knocking the training wheels off. There's a lot more that he can do to take his health up. He doesn't even know about it yet. But that's my job. I look at it as my job is the explorer. I'm like Tim the Explorer. Remember Dora? Like, I am the human experiment. I will try anything and everything I can that makes sense to me to see if it will benefit me, so that I can then share it with you and see if it works for you too.
That's awesome.
Does that help?
I appreciate that. No, that was great. Whatever you selling, I'm buying. Where's my credit card? Hold on.
Well, I'm trying to sell you.
Well, that's actually
enough to just take action. That's what it's about.
I hear. Yes, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing that you talk about. We'll call it the Health and Wealth Podcast, and I'm on auto ship with Chemical Free Body Green 85. Especially, it's a great way just to get started on his program. So anyway, hey, Enrichers, we really appreciate you coming and joining us for another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. We were pleased today to be able to have LaTika Tillis from Avidian Wealth. Is it right? Avidian? Am I saying that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. They're in Houston, Texas, sharing her story and her backstory and everything. So thank you, LaTika, for coming on and being a phenomenal guest on the show today.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely our pleasure. So, hey, Enrichers, make sure to see all of our other previous guests. Are not quite as good as LaTika. She might be the best guest we've ever had on here. But you can go to our website at www.thehealthandwealthpodcastshow.com and make sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google. So for my phenomenal co-host, Mr. Chemical Free Body himself, Tim James, I'm Carter Wilcoxson, CEO and founder of CSI Financial Group and Epic Services Company. Wishing you all a very phenomenal rest of your day. LaTika, thank you again for joining us on the Health and Wealth Podcast. Hey, Enrichers, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Wilcoxson.
And I'm your host, Tim James. And by God, we are committed to helping you guys have fat wallets, flat bellies. So tune in again for another episode and make sure to like, share, and drink a lot of water.
Or beer.
You have just listened to the Health and Wealth Podcast with Carter and Tim.